Just here to get straight to the point. My wife and I have been married since we were 25. We are 38 now. We met in college, got married, and everything has been great. We both graduated, got good jobs, and started our lives together. Me and my wife both made good money, so money was never an issue for us. My wife worked for her dad's small business, while I worked for a very large company. After a few years, my boss left the company out of nowhere, and they needed someone to take over. The only person who knew how to run the department was me, so I got a major pay jump, a better bonus, and better benefits. So, at 28, I was making probably 3 times more than my wife. That same year, my wife gave birth to our first daughter. Then, 2 years later, our second. My wife, due to working for her father, was able to be more diverse in working. Well, around 5 years ago, my father-in-law passed away unexpectedly. That left my mother-in-law and wife in a hard position. Sell the company or run it themselves. My mother-in-law had no clue how to run it, so my wife said she would do it. After my wife took the company, it did just as well as when her father ran it. With that being said, my wife got a huge pay increase, more than me. I was proud of her. Going from a basic worker to running a whole company isn't easy. Anyway, our daughters started suffering from not seeing their parents. Me and my wife discussed one of us staying home. She said, "The company you work for will be fine without you. Mine could go under." I agreed. So I quit my job and became a stay-at-home dad and husband. I do everything. I make sure the girls are all taken care of. I cook, clean, fix things, make sure errands are run, you name it. I pamper my wife when she gets home from work. This went well for a while until about a year ago. My wife was always very appreciative of what I did and loved it. She has become very mean lately, saying things like, "Do you do anything? Or how about you work for real?" I work my butt off every day, making sure you don't have to lift a finger when you get home at all. Also, I had a real job, but I quit to raise and take care of the girls, our home, and you. Not to mention my wife is very sexual, always has been. She quit initiating sex, and when I asked she is never in the mood, that was very odd. Eventually, I quit trying. I just thought, with all the pandemic crap and everything else, she was just very stressed, and it was getting to her. I started trying harder to make her happy. Nothing ever worked. Last weekend, my oldest had a softball game. So, I get everything ready and we go. During the game, I wanted to take a video of my mom and dad, since they live in another state and don't get to see my daughters that often. I forgot my phone, so I asked my wife if I could see hers. She hadn't been attached to it all day, so it would be good for her to get off it. Anyway, she hands it to me and says she is going to get a drink and a snack. She gets up. I video my daughter when a message comes up on some app. I check, and I can't even fathom what I see. My wife and this guy from her work, who is 8 years younger, are sexting and sending videos and pics, talking about how great the sex was, and then me. He is saying how I am some wimp who can't get a real job taking care of his woman, and my wife agrees with him. I couldn't believe what I saw. I was so devastated and angry all at the same time. I heard my wife coming back, so I closed the app and started videoing. On the ride home, and when we get home, my wife tries to talk to me, and I am not in the mood. Eventually, we lay in bed, and for the first time, I guess they hadn't met in a while, trying to have sex. I tell her I am not in a mood. She says, "If you are going to be a bitch about everything, you can sleep on the couch." I got up and went to the couch, and now I've been here since. I don't know how to move forward with this. I really just don't know where to start. My wife was my everything. My girls are my world, and all of that is dying. Update. First off, I do have the text, pics, videos, and everything. Second, I don't any of the company. It is 50 to 50 between her and my mother-in-law. Third, I can't sleep in bed. I have been sleeping in the guest bedroom every night, and that is where I will be staying. To answer, I have decided to divorce her. Anyway, this morning, I called a firm in another town to avoid anyone finding out. Thankfully, they were able to get me in this morning, as someone had canceled. After dropping off my girls, I drove over there. To make a long story short, he is a good lawyer. I showed him what I had. He said that luckily for me, with the evidence I have, she will be pretty much screwed in the divorce. Seeing as I quit my job to raise our girls, she is never home. She is having an affair, prioritizes this man over me and my girls, and she will lose very easily. He basically said we will get child support and alimony. I will keep the house, and she will have to pay for it as long as my girls live there. Also, he stated that we could even try for more money, since I am considered no longer viable in the working world, to help me pay for more education to get a job. Some of you were right. He said to not work until after the divorce is over. He said since you are the husband, if you have a job, you can lose a lot of this. He asked if I wanted full custody. I said that I don't mind my wife seeing her girls on the affair in the marital home. I can basically do what I want. He also stated that bringing over a strange man to the house put the girls in danger and makes her guilty. So, I will be going for full custody, where she can get weekends once maybe twice a month. No man will be allowed around my girls, and if there are she could face problems with me if I find out. I just don't want that piece of garbage around my girls. He eventually said to keep quiet until the draft are ready, and then he will issue someone to serve her and have it issued that she is required to leave the home. He said he should have it done sometime next week. Update. To preface, I have talked to my lawyer about these posts. I didn't go into too much detail. They did tell me though as long as I keep them brief and not super specific that I can post, but I just have to be careful about what I put on to not lead to too many details. That is that. We will start with the test. I was able to get an STD on myself and a paternity test on my girls. I came out that I thankfully have no disease and I am clear. Since I have been pretty much sexless from her for the last year, I wasn't all that surprised. Now for the one that I am sure most of you are wondering. The test on my two girls. Am I the dad? I will always be their dad regardless of the results. However, I am here to say that yes, I am their father. I have never been so happy to know that I am their dad. Never thought I would have to question it, but here we are. As for what has happened with my stacks, well, she is out of the house and I have been granted full temporary custody. In the future, I will go into more specific details. However, for now, she is out of the house. My lawyer set everything up for me to get my girls and make sure that we legally handled her being removed from the home. It wasn't pretty, but details for another time. She was served at work, and from what I know it wasn't pretty. Like I said though, details for another time? My girls know what is going on. My oldest knows we are separating, and one of her friend's parents split for the same reason. She has seen what happened with her friend and doesn't want us to split. She has been crying for me to let mommy come home. I will be getting them in with a child therapist to explain and help them understand from the direction of my lawyer. My youngest just wants mommy to come home and misses her. It kills me and makes me feel like a terrible father, and they probably hate me now. Sometimes I think I should just let their mother cheat on me to keep the family unit to make my girls happy. I just can't do that. Sometimes I think about allowing an open relationship and we can just wait till the girls are older, but that won't work for me. Plus, I know the girls will pick up on it and will not like it that mommy and daddy don't love each other. As for my ex, she is living with her mother at this point. My mother-in-law has called me and asked to meet. I agreed and we will meet at some point. She didn't ask for details as she said we will talk later, but begged me not to take her granddaughters away from her. I said you are a great and loving grandmother, and as long as you can separate my girls from what is going on between your daughter and I see no issue with you being able to see them and I will not take them out of your life. She thanked me and that is it. My ex has been trying to call me and text me trying to figure out us. Under direction of my lawyer, he has had it set up so that I can talk to her through a trackable method and it is purely about the girls. No more, no less. So that is it for now. We'll probably keep updating, and once this is all over with I will make one big update for all the details I have to be careful about as of now. Update. So first off, I had Thanksgiving with my SDBX and MIL. I did this purely for the girls and made sure with my lawyer this was only about the girls and not about reconciliation. That was taken care of. First I met with my MIL pre-Thanksgiving. We met and had a pretty mutual discussion. Mainly just things about how we will handle my daughters after. My MIL did tell me some stuff about my SDBX. I guess my SDBX was cheated on by her high school boyfriend. Didn't even know she dated anyone. I guess this guy came from one of those families, according to my MIL, and they told her to avoid him. Well, I guess one night she caught him with his head under another girl's dress and tongue deep in a girl's jewelry box. She had a couple of boyfriends they met in college, but she knew they wouldn't last. She said that as soon as she met me she found her son-in-law. She says she is so sorry for her daughter's actions and will make sure that she doesn't try to do anything problematic with the divorce. Anyway, a couple of days before Thanksgiving my MIL asked for me to come over for dinner with the girls. I asked if her daughter would be there, and she said yes. I said I can't be with her there. She said she understands, but asked if we could put on the holiday one more time for the girls. She said I know you have a lawyer. Ask them, and if they said it is a bad idea, I get it. I did, and they said to tell your wife via the app this is purely for the girls to avoid any confusion. So I did. She had contacted me before about coming over. She has been begging me to see me and the girls. The girls have been begging me to see their mom. I swallowed my pride for my girls and we went. It was awkward. My SDBX gave our daughters a hug fine then tried to hug and kiss me. I just avoided her and went to give my MIL a hug. My SDBX tried to act like husband and wife and was trying to talk to me. I answered with yes and no's and helped my MIL finish dinner and clean up. My MIL is religious and wanted to do a prayer, and my SDBX sat next to me. I held my daughter's hand. My wife tried to grab mine. I pulled away. I know it may seem petty, but I don't want her touching me. I am an atheist, but out of respect for my MIL, I go along with it. Dinner was fine. Again, SDBX tried to act like we are going to be married and asked about Christmas and vacations. When she mentioned this stuff, I knew going over was a mistake. We finished dinner and I pretty much got up, cleaned my daughter's dishes, then was ready to go. My daughters wanted to watch a movie with their mother that we always watch. I let them and my SDBX try to cuddle next to me on the couch. I sat in the chair after that. My MIL was very mad at my SDBX the whole night for how she acted. I could tell by the looks she gave her. My daughters fell asleep, so I carried them to the car. I went in to grab something and my SDBX grabbed me in tears, begging me to work on things and that she wants to be a family and is so sorry for what happened. Before I could say anything, my MIL grabbed her by the hair. Not joking. Yanked her and told me good night, then began yelling at her daughter. My wife is still calling and begging now to work on us. I leave her on scene. I will only talk about the girls, and I am sure they are going to want to do the same for Christmas. I don't know if I can, or if it is okay. Once again, I will discuss this with my lawyer. Final update. This will not be long, but things have gotten very bad for my girls. Basically, my girls had 2 sessions this week with their therapist. The first one was good. My girls came out with what seemed to be more peaceful and calmer than usual. I talked to the therapist after, and she seemed to be very good and understood my girls well. So I took them to their second one and things went horribly. Basically, the therapist explained in age-appropriate terms that the reason me and their mother are separating is because they're cheated, had an affair, and betrayed me. I knew eventually she would, but I didn't think it would happen this soon. I want to get my girls, and basically it was a burst of tears and them climbing all over me and giving me hugs, crying, saying they love me. I am happy they love me, but this is not what I wanted to happen with my girls. I asked the therapist why did she tell them. She said the girls knew you two are separating, and the girls noticed you seem to be really mean and unloving with their mother. Your girls aren't stupid, she told me. They know how you are, and they know how you treat their mom. They wanted to know why you were separating. I tried to walk around it the best I could, she said, but the girls are not going to progress in therapy if we don't tell them. I am not going to go into detail on what exactly she said to them, but it was age-appropriate. They now know the age-appropriate version of their mother being unfaithful. I think my oldest could maybe handle this and be okay, but not my youngest, so we get home and my girls won't let go of me. They are literally crying the whole night, so I order food, put their favorite movies on in my bedroom, and we laid there all night. They fell asleep and I went to the bathroom and just cried. My Stex doesn't even realize the pain she is causing our girls. I don't know how I am going to deal with this. The therapist told me we could try medication for a bit, till they get used to the new normal. I refused to do so, which she supported, and said it was just an option as I'm not drugging them. Disclaimer, she cannot give the drugs. She said they would need to see their primary, and they would probably diagnose my girls with something that would allow them to medicate them. I would rather deal with my daughter's emotions the healthy way. I won't have to worry about Christmas as my daughters hate their mother now. My oldest said she never wanted to see her again. My youngest follows what her older sister says, even though she may actually agree. I was shocked. I said, you don't hate her, you may be mad, but you don't hate her. She loves and cares about you. My oldest just said no she doesn't, and then just cried into my arms until she fell asleep, and so did my youngest. So this is my life now. I don't think there will ever be a good time to bring it up with the girls, and as their therapist said, they noticed that you are the one being mean to their mom. Kids are very observant, and they should not be forming their opinions based on half-truths. Also, their initial reaction is very understandable. There is probably a little bit of guilt since they initially thought you were the bad guy. Just continue to be there for them, and give them lots of hugs. Tell them none of this is their fault, and you both love them still. If you don't want them growing up with anger towards their mom, then discuss it with their therapist on how you can do that. That doesn't mean they have to forgive mom, just learning to let go and not let it define them. I wish you all the best with your situation and hope things are able to work out. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to comment below with your thoughts on this. My name is Jack, and for the longest time, I lived what seemed like a dream. I married Emily, my college sweetheart, the woman who captured my heart with her vibrant smile and infectious laugh. We were blessed with twins, Alex and Ava, who brought endless joy into our lives. Our home in the suburbs of New York was filled with love, laughter, and the chaos that comes with raising young children. I worked as an architect, a job that and passion for design. Emily, with her flair for communication and charisma, thrived in her career in public relations. Her job was demanding, often requiring late nights and weekend work, but she always seemed to balance it with family life. Her success made me proud, and I never begrudged her the time spent away from home. After all, we were a team, supporting each other's ambitions and dreams. Our life seemed almost too good to be true. We had wonderful friends, our weekends often filled with backyard barbecues or birthday parties for the twins. Emily and I shared a social circle that included her colleagues and our neighbors, a community that felt like an extended family. But as perfect as our life appeared, I couldn't shake off a nagging feeling that something was amiss. Emily's phone was constantly buzzing with texts and emails. She assured me it was just work, but there was an intensity to her correspondence that seemed excessive, even for her demanding job. I tried to dismiss my concerns, attributing them to the natural ebb and flow of marriage and the stresses of our busy lives. It wasn't just her phone habits that had changed. Emily started going on more work trips, her schedule becoming increasingly unpredictable. "It's just a busy season at work," she'd explain. I wanted to believe her, to trust in the woman I loved, but a small voice in my head whispered doubts that I couldn't silence. Our conversations started to feel more superficial, our interactions more routine. I missed the deep, meaningful talks we used to have, the way she'd share her hopes and fears with me. Now, it seemed like she was always distracted, her thoughts elsewhere. Despite these changes, I clung to the belief that our love was strong enough to weather any storm. I focused on being the best father and husband I could be, hoping that whatever was causing the distance between us would soon pass. The day my perfect world began to crumble was a chilly autumn evening. I had been away in Chicago for a work conference, a project that I was leading for the first time. Eager to share my success and experiences, I decided to return home a day earlier, thinking of the surprise and joy it would bring to Emily and our twins. As I drove home from the airport, with Alex and Ava chatting excitedly in the back seat about showing their mom the souvenirs they had picked out, my heart swelled with love and anticipation. The image of Emily's delighted face upon our unexpected return played over and over in my mind. Approaching our house, I noticed that all the lights were off except for our bedroom. She must be working late again, I thought to myself. As we got out of the car, I told the twins to be quiet so we could surprise their mom. The three of us tiptoed to the front door, our whispers and giggles a contrast to but as I looked up to our bedroom window, hoping to catch a glimpse of Emily possibly working at her desk, the scene that met my eyes was like a dagger through my heart. There, in our sanctuary, the place where we had shared so many intimate moments, was my wife with another man. Her boss, a man I had shared drinks with, discussed projects with, was in my bed, with my wife. The world around me seemed to freeze. The laughter and excitement of the twins suddenly felt distant, as if coming from another world. My hands trembled, my breath caught in my throat. How could this be happening? Was this a nightmare? I quickly ushered Alex and Ava inside, away from the window, my mind a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and pain. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Ava asked, her innocent eyes searching mine for answers I couldn't give. I managed a strained smile, assuring them everything was fine, even as my world was falling apart. That night, I put the twins to bed, reading their favorite story with a forced cheerfulness. As they drifted off to sleep, I sat in the living room, the silence deafening, the images from the bedroom window replaying in my mind. I didn't confront Emily that night. Instead, I lay awake, the haunting questions swirling in my mind. How long had this been going on? Was our entire life together a lie? What did this mean for our children, for our future? As dawn broke, I made a decision. I needed to know the full extent of Emily's betrayal. I couldn't confront her with just suspicions and a single, painful image. I needed proof, undeniable evidence that would reveal the truth of the life I thought I knew. In the following days, I moved through life like a ghost, my interactions mechanical, my thoughts consumed by the betrayal. I maintained a semblance of normalcy for the sake of the twins, but inside, I was in turmoil. Emily seemed oblivious to my inner struggle, her demeanor unchanged, which only fueled my suspicions and hurt. I contacted a private investigator, a decision that felt like crossing an irreversible threshold. The PI was professional and discreet, promising to gather information with utmost confidentiality. As I provided details about Emily's schedule, her work, and our life, a sense of surrealism washed over me. How had our life come to this? The investigation was thorough. The PI followed Emily, documenting her movements, her meetings. The evidence that came back was a mosaic of deception. It wasn't just her boss. There were others, colleagues, acquaintances, even old friends. The extent of her infidelity was staggering. But the most painful revelation was the realization that many in our circle knew about Emily's affairs. Friends we had vacationed with, colleagues we had entertained in our home, even her sister, They were all aware of her duplicity. The sense of betrayal deepened, extending beyond my marriage to encompass my entire social world. I struggled to comprehend the reality that the life I had been living was a facade. The woman I had loved and trusted, the mother of my children, had been leading a double life, one that everyone seemed to know about but me. The feelings of humiliation, anger, and grief were overwhelming. The evidence from the PI gave me a clear picture, but it also left me with a difficult decision. What should I do with this information? How could I confront the mother of my children, my partner of over a decade, with such damning evidence? I knew I couldn't ignore what I had learned. For my own sanity, for the future of my children, I needed to confront Emily. But the thought of that confrontation, of bringing all the lies and betrayal into the open, filled me with dread. In the end, I realized that the truth, however painful, was the only path forward. It was time to face the reality of our broken marriage, to confront the woman I had shared my life with and demand answers to the questions that tormented me. The day I decided to confront Emily is etched in my memory, a defining moment in my life. I waited for the twins to be at school, ensuring they would be shielded from the impending storm. My heart raced, and my palms were sweaty as I heard her car pull into the driveway. Emily entered the house, her face reflecting the usual stress and fatigue from work. She didn't immediately notice the seriousness in my demeanor. "Jack, you're home early. Is everything okay?" she asked casually, hanging her coat. I took a deep breath, my voice steady but cold. "We need to talk, Emily. It's about us, about our marriage." Her expression shifted from casual to concerned. "What's wrong? Are the kids okay?" "The kids are fine. This is about us, Emily. Or rather, it's about you." I paused, gathering my courage. "I know about the affairs, Emily. All of them." The room fell silent. Emily's face drained of color, her eyes widened in shock. For a moment, she said nothing, and then the floodgates opened. Denial, anger, and finally, a reluctant acceptance. "How did you find out?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I explained about the private investigator, about the evidence I had gathered. Emily listened, her face a mask of shock and guilt. "I never meant to hurt you," she started. But her words felt hollow, rehearsed. I listened as she tried to explain, to justify her actions. She spoke of feeling unfulfilled, of a need for excitement and validation. But her words sounded like excuses, attempts to rationalize the irreparable harm she had caused our family. The conversation was long and painful. We argued, we cried, and in the end, we sat in silence, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavily between us. The woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we had built together, it was all a lie. In the days that followed, I grappled with a range of emotions: anger, sorrow, disbelief, and a profound sense of loss. Our marriage, once the bedrock of my life, was now in ruins. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure: our relationship could never return to what it once was. The trust was shattered, and with it, the love I once felt for Emily. The process of divorce was a labyrinth of emotions and legal formalities, each step a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. The meetings with lawyers were clinical and sterile, stripping the marriage of its emotional essence, reducing it to assets, liabilities, and custody arrangements. The primary focus, however, remained clear throughout: the well-being and stability of Alex and Ava. Adjusting to life as a single parent was challenging. The house, once filled with the sounds of a family, now echoed with a different tone. I took up the mantle of both mother and father in many respects, ensuring that the twins' life remained as uninterrupted as possible. We established new routines, new traditions, carving out a sense of normalcy in the wake of upheaval. I grappled with the loneliness that often crept in after the twins were asleep. The silence of the house was a stark contrast to the chaos of daytime activities. I found solace in late-night work, immersing myself in my architectural designs, or sometimes just sitting in the twins' room, watching them sleep, drawing strength from their peaceful faces. Telling our friends and family about the divorce brought a range of reactions. The conversations were often difficult, filled with awkward pauses and unspoken questions. The sense of betrayal extended beyond Emily, reaching into these relationships as well. Trust, once a given in these relationships, now felt like a fragile, elusive thing. As I navigated the complexities of divorce, I also embarked on a journey of self-discovery. I reconnected with old hobbies and passions that I had set aside. I began running in the mornings, the solitude of the runs providing a space for reflection and healing. I also joined a support group for single parents, where sharing experiences and advice brought a sense of community and understanding. Emily's journey through the divorce was a tumultuous one. Initially, there was a sense of defiance in her demeanor, a refusal to fully acknowledge the devastation her actions had caused. She would oscillate between moments of anger and tearful apologies, the latter often coming in late-night calls or unexpected visits. As the legal proceedings progressed, the reality of the situation seemed to settle in. There were moments of clarity where she expressed genuine remorse, particularly during discussions about the impact on Alex and Ava. These moments were painful, a reminder of the deep connection we once shared, now tainted by betrayal. Our co-parenting relationship was strained, yet functional. We agreed on a schedule that prioritized the twins' needs, ensuring they had equal time with each parent. Seeing Emily during handovers was initially difficult, each encounter a reminder of the hurt. But over time, a routine established, a new normal that was less about us and more about providing stability for Alex and Ava. Despite the challenges, Emily remained an involved mother. She attended school events, was there for doctor's appointments, and maintained her role in the twins' lives. It was a delicate balancing act, managing the remnants of our shared past while building separate futures. Throughout this period, I saw changes in Emily. The facade of the perfect life she had maintained for so long seemed to crumble, revealing a more vulnerable, introspective person. It was a side of her I hadn't seen in years, perhaps a side that got lost in the pursuit of whatever it was she was seeking in those affairs. As the final papers of the divorce were signed, a chapter of my life closed, but another began. The pain of the past still lingered, but it was gradually being replaced by a cautious optimism about the future. I focused on rebuilding not just my life, but my sense of self. The experience, as harrowing as it was, taught me about resilience, about the capacity to rise from adversity. I found strength in my role as a father, in the unconditional love Alex and Ava showed me. Their laughter and joy were reminders of the good that remained in my life. I also rediscovered my passion for architecture. My work became not just a job, but a creative outlet, a means of expressing and rebuilding myself. I took on new projects, each a step towards creating a new identity, separate from the man who was defined by his marriage and its subsequent failure. The journey also led to a reevaluation of my relationships. Friendships that had survived the turmoil grew stronger, built on a foundation of shared experiences and renewed trust. I also formed new connections with people who entered my life in the aftermath of the divorce, offering fresh perspectives and unwavering support. Looking ahead, the future is a canvas of possibilities. I am no longer just a man who was betrayed, but a father, a professional, and an individual with dreams and aspirations. I step into this new chapter with an open heart and a mind ready to embrace whatever comes next, knowing that I have the strength to face it. This journey has been one of profound transformation. From the ashes of a broken marriage, I have emerged with a deeper understanding of myself, of what it means to be resilient, and of the value of genuine relationships. It's a story that began with betrayal but has evolved into a narrative of growth, healing, and hope. I step forward with a sense of purpose and optimism, ready to explore new horizons, to forge new paths. The future is unwritten, and I am the author of this next chapter. With Alex and Ava by my side, and a renewed sense of self, I am ready for the adventures that await. As this chapter of our story closes, I want to invite you, my viewers, to be a part of the ongoing narrative. Your thoughts, experiences, and insights are invaluable, and I'd love to hear them. Share your thoughts. What did you think of this story? Were there moments that resonated with you, or aspects you found particularly moving? Let's discuss in the comments below your experiences. Have you, or someone you know, gone through a similar experience? How did you, or they, navigate the challenges presented? Sharing your stories can offer support and insight to others in similar situations. Subscribe for more. If you're new to the channel or haven't yet subscribed, consider joining our community. We share stories like this regularly, providing a space for reflection, learning, and connection. Like and share. If you found this story impactful, please give it a like and share it with friends. It might offer perspective, comfort, or under 10 years. A decade that once sparkled with the promise of eternal companionship had subtly dimmed into a routine existence for me, a 38-year-old woman, and my husband, aged 42. Our marriage, once a vibrant tapestry of love and mutual respect, had gradually frayed into a mundane partnership devoid of the affection and passion that once defined us. In the early years, our love was the kind spoken of in fairy tales. We would find any excuse to be near each other, our conversation stretching late into the night, filled with dreams and laughter. Physical affection was abundant, a touch, a kiss, a hug. These were the unspoken languages of our love. But as time passed, these moments of closeness became rare, almost like fleeting shadows. I often found myself lying awake in our bed, feeling the cold distance between us. The space felt larger each night, an invisible chasm that grew with every unspoken word and unmet need. I yearned for the simplest forms of affection, a hand held, a quick kiss goodbye, a warm embrace. But these gestures had become as rare as rain in a desert, leaving me parched for emotional connection. Communication, once the cornerstone of our relationship, had withered. I attempted to bridge this gap, initiating conversations about our dwindling intimacy. My words were met with dismissive nods or empty promises of change. I felt unheard, unseen, as if I were a ghost in my own home. This lack of communication extended to our sex life, which had become an infrequent and unfulfilling encounter. On the rare occasions we were intimate, it was perfunctory, devoid of the passion and mutual satisfaction that once ignited our connection. I often lay there afterward, staring at the ceiling, engulfed in a silence that screamed louder than any words. Despite this, our daily life maintained a facade of normalcy. We went about our routines, a well-rehearsed dance of domesticity. To the outside world, we were a perfectly ordinary couple. But inside, our home was a theater where the play of our love no longer held any meaning. The emotional toll was heavy. Resentment began to seep into the cracks of my heart, a slow poison that tainted my view of the man I once loved so deeply. I questioned what had changed. Was it the inevitable evolution of a long-term relationship, or had we simply stopped trying? The answers eluded me, lost in the silence that had become our constant companion. As I navigated through this phase of our marriage, I grappled with feelings of loneliness and frustration. The man who once promised to be my partner in life now seemed more like a distant roommate, sharing space but not life. The void between us grew, filled with unspoken words and unmet needs, a testament to a love that once was but now seemed a distant memory. In this state of emotional limbo, I found myself at a crossroads, yearning for the affection and connection that had once defined our union. Yet, I remained hopeful, clinging to the remnants of a love that seemed to be slipping away with each passing day. The office, a place of mundane routines and endless paperwork, unexpectedly became the stage for a seismic shift in my life. It started innocuously with my coworker, a 44-year-old man whose desk was just a casual stroll from mine. He was charming in a nonchalant way, his humor a refreshing break from the monochrome of daily tasks. Our initial interactions were trivial, exchanges about weekend plans or comments on the weather. However, his presence began to linger in my mind, a welcome distraction from the emotional desert I inhabited at home. His words, always laced with a hint of flotation, started to ignite something within me that I thought had long since extinguished. His compliments were like a balm to my bruised self-esteem. When he remarked how my new haircut suited me or noticed the color of my blouse, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. There was a growing warmth in his gaze that made my heart race, a sensation I hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. The flotation escalated subtly. Shared lunches turned into coffee breaks just for two. Our conversations ventured beyond the safe territories of work and weather, delving into personal territories. I learned about his hobbies, his aspirations, the contours of his life outside the office walls. And in turn, I found myself sharing pieces of my own life, the joys and the sorrows. Then came the day when our harmless banter crossed a line. It was an accidental brush of hands, as we both reached for a document, but the electricity of that touch sent shockwaves through me. It was as if a dormant volcano had suddenly come to life, sending a rush of adrenaline and desire coursing through my veins. The first kiss happened in a moment that was both unexpected and yet, somehow, inevitable. We were working late, the office quiet and deserted. The air between us crackled with unspoken tension. When his lips met mine, it was a confluence of desperation and desire. It was a kiss that spoke of unfulfilled needs and a hunger for connection. That night, we crossed the final boundary. It was in a secluded part of the city, away from the prying eyes of those who knew us. The lovemaking was intense and passionate, a stark contrast to the mechanical interactions with my husband. In his arms, I felt desired, alive, a stark reminder of what I had been missing. Yet, as I lay there in the aftermath, a tangle of satisfaction and guilt, I knew I would soon be returning home to my husband. The thought brought a crushing weight of reality down upon me. I had stepped into a realm of betrayal, driven by a longing for something that had been absent in my life for far too long. Driving home, the night's events replayed in my mind. Each touch, Each whisper, each moment of surrender, was etched into my memory, a vivid contrast to the coldness that awaited me. I knew that what I had done was a betrayal, yet it was also a desperate cry for something more, something that made me feel whole, even if just for a fleeting moment. As I entered the silent house, seeing my husband's familiar form, a pang of guilt pierced through me. The contrast between the passion of the night and the emptiness of my marriage was stark and jarring. I was now living a double life, caught between duty and desire, fulfillment and fidelity. In the weeks that followed that fateful night, my life became a complex tapestry of concealed emotions and clandestine meetings. The affair with my coworker, once a momentary lapse, had evolved into a series of stolen moments, each one adding weight to the secret I carried. The dual life I led was exhilarating yet exhausting. At work, I would steal glances at my coworker, our eyes communicating a shared secret that added an undercurrent of excitement to mundane office hours. Our brief touches, a hand on the small of my back, a whispered compliment, became lifelines in a sea of monotony. Yet, with each encounter, the burden of guilt grew heavier. I was acutely aware of the betrayal, the violation of the vows I had once taken with such conviction. The contrast between the man at home, who had become more a fixture than a partner, and the one who ignited a fire within me, was stark. The affair was a balm to my long-neglected needs. In the arms of my coworker, I rediscovered parts of myself that I thought had been lost to the ravages of a loveless marriage. He made me feel desirable, something I hadn't felt in years. His desire for me was evident. His touches spoke of longing and admiration, making me feel like a woman worth wanting. Yet, this newfound fulfillment came with its own set of challenges. The secrecy of our meetings, the constant vigilance to avoid detection, the lies that slipped easily from my lips, it was a world built on a foundation of deceit. I was living a lie, and with each passing day, the strain of this duplicity chipped away at my sense of self. The physical aspect of our affair was intoxicating, a heady mix of passion and forbidden desire. Each encounter left me with a mix of euphoria and sorrow. The joy of being wanted was tainted by the knowledge that it was a temporary escape from a reality that I could not ignore. My home life became a series of mechanical interactions. Conversations with my husband were brief and superficial, our interactions void of the warmth that once defined us. The physical distance between us and our bed felt like a chasm, a silent testament to the emotional gulf that had formed. I was trapped in a cycle of longing and regret. The moments with my coworker were a respite from the emotional drought of my marriage, yet they were also a constant reminder of the deceit I was perpetuating. I was torn between the comfort of familiarity and the thrill of the new, between my commitment to my husband and my own desires. Each night, as I lay in bed next to my husband, the reality of my actions would settle around me like a heady cloak. The guilt was a constant companion, whispering reminders of the duplicity that had become my life. I was caught in a web of my own making, each thread a lie, each space a secret. This secret burden was a constant struggle, a battle between the desire for emotional fulfillment and the guilt of betrayal. It was a path that led me further away from the woman I once was, a journey into a realm of moral ambiguity where the lines between right and wrong were blurred. The day I resolved to confront my husband marked a turning point in our strained relationship. My heart was heavy with the weight of the confession I was about to make, a mix of fear and a desperate need for absolution. I had written 2 letters, one detailed and one more concise, allowing him the choice of how much he wanted to know. I found him tinkering with his motorcycle, lost in his own world. Gathering my courage, I approached him. "We need to talk. It's important." His response was dismissive, a simple acknowledgement before returning to his task. The sting of being brushed aside was all too familiar, yet I waited, hoping for a moment of his attention. As time passed, my anxiety grew. The critical nature of our conversation loomed over me like a dark cloud. When I finally approached him again, he was lounging, absorbed in the television. His casual dismissal of my request to talk, a question of candid weight, left me feeling invisible and unimportant. Frustration and hurt boiled over, and I walked away. The realization that I had been continuously brushed off throughout our marriage crystallized in my mind. I decided to pack my bags, a symbolic gesture of the end of my patience and the culmination of years of neglect. When my husband found me packing, his confusion was evident. "What are you doing?" he asked, unaware of the storm brewing within me. It was then that years of pent-up frustration and resentment erupted. I confronted him with raw emotion, my voice rising with every word. "I'm done being your roommate, begging for affection, trying to fix things alone. The confrontation escalated quickly, our voices raised in anger and pain. His dismissive attitude, the suggestion to find someone else, was the last straw. It was then, in the heat of the moment, that I revealed my affair. I have. Since January. The shock on his face was palpable, a mix of disbelief and hurt. Our argument continued, a chaotic blend of accusations, confessions, and the outpouring of long-suppressed emotions. I was no longer holding back. Years of feeling neglected and pushed aside had given way to a flood of anger and sadness. In the midst of our heated exchange, my best friend arrived. I left with her, still shaken and emotionally drained. The reality of my actions and their consequences hitting me fully. The car ride to her place was a blur, my mind replaying the confrontation, the culmination of a marriage that had been crumbling for years. At my friend's house, the magnitude of the situation finally sunk in. I collapsed, overwhelmed by the realization that my marriage, which had started with so much love and hope, had deteriorated to this point. The grief for what had been lost was overwhelming, a painful acknowledgement of the part one had played in the disintegration of our relationship. The aftermath of the revelation was like the aftershocks of an earthquake, each moment reverberating with the intensity of the confrontation. The house, once a symbol of our shared life, now felt like a battleground, each room echoing with the words of our heated argument. My decision to leave was both impulsive and a long time coming. The years of feeling neglected, of my cries for affection and connection going unheard, had culminated in this moment of irrevocable change. As I packed my bags, each item I placed inside felt like a step further away from the life I had known. My husband's return was marked by confusion and anger. His question, "What the hell is your problem?" was met with the full force of my pent-up frustration. For years, I had kept my feelings contained, but now they poured out uncontrollably. I yelled, my voice hoarse with emotion, "I'm done being your roommate. I'm done begging you to show affection." His response, a dismissive remark about me being dramatic, only fueled my anger. It was a stark reminder of the emotional disconnect that had plagued our marriage. "All you do is relax. I'm not bugging you anymore," I retorted, my words laced with bitterness. His attempt to downplay the situation, to brush off my feelings with a sarcastic "God, what is it?" was the last straw. I unleashed everything, years of suppressed emotions, the pain of being ignored, the loneliness of a one-sided effort to salvage our relationship. In a moment of raw honesty, I blurted out the depth of my desperation, how I had begged for his attention, for any sign of affection. His callous reply, suggesting that I find someone else, was met with the stark truth of my affair. The revelation shook him, and for the first time, it seemed as though he truly grasped the severity of our situation. The screaming match continued, the air thick with accusations and revelations. I was beyond holding back. This was years of frustration and resentment boiling over. Even as my best friend arrived, the argument raged on, a verbal manifestation of the emotional turmoil that had been brewing for years. Finally, I left, bags in hand, my friend by my side. The ride to her place was a blur of emotions. I was still reeling from the argument, the words we had exchanged, and the reality of what those words meant. It was a moment of breaking, a realization that the marriage I had entered with so much hope and love had irreparably changed. Arriving at my friend's house, the full impact of the situation hit me. I broke down, the grief and guilt overwhelming me. Repeating this isn't what I wanted over and over. I mourned not just the end of my marriage, but also the loss of the future I had once envisioned. This chapter of my life had closed with a resounding crash, leaving me to grapple with the consequences of my actions and the reality of a future that was vastly different from what I had once hoped for. The night following my departure was one of the longest of my life. In the quiet sanctuary of my best friend's home, the events of the day replayed endlessly in my mind. The argument with my husband, the raw emotion, the finality of my departure, all of it swirled in a tumultuous mix of guilt, grief, and a poignant sense of loss. Sleep was elusive, as each time I closed my eyes, I was haunted by the image of my husband's face when I revealed the affair. The shock, the hurt, the dawning realization of the depth of our marital crisis, it was a picture that cut through the chaos of my emotions, leaving a deep, aching sorrow. The following morning, I returned to the house that was no longer a home but a shell of memories and broken promises. My husband's demeanor had shifted. His anger was replaced with a cold indifference that was somehow more painful. As I gathered my belongings, his sly comments stung, but I had no energy left for confrontation. I was drained, a shell of the person who had once entered that house with so much love and hope. My response to his insinuations about staying with another man was terse, a simple whatever, bye. It was a stark departure from the passionate outbursts of the previous day. The emotional exhaustion had settled in, leaving a numbness that was both a relief and a deep sadness. As I moved my belongings, each item I packed felt like a piece of my life that I was putting away. The realization that this was truly the end of my marriage, the end of a chapter of my life, was overwhelming. The hopes and dreams I had once harbored for us had dissipated, leaving behind a stark reality that I was now forced to confront. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, I grappled with the guilt of my infidelity and the acknowledgement of my role in the deterioration of our relationship. It wasn't just the affair, it was the years of neglect, the unmet needs, the silent cries for attention. All of it had contributed to the unraveling of our marriage. The drive to my friend's house was a journey of introspection. The streets and buildings passed in a blur, but my mind was sharply focused on the myriad of emotions coursing through me. There was guilt, for the pain I had caused, grief, for the loss of what had once been a loving relationship, and a profound sense of failure, for not being able to salvage what we had built together. At my friend's house, I was met with a comforting embrace, a silent acknowledgement of the pain I was going through. In her presence, I allowed myself to feel the full extent of my emotions. The tears came, unbidden and uncontrollable, each one a testament to the love, the loss, and the profound sense of regret that enveloped me. In the solitude of that room, away from the remnants of my failed marriage, I faced a harsh truth. The path that had led me here was paved with both my actions and my inactions. The affair, while a symptom of my unhappiness, was also a choice I had made, a choice that had irrevocably altered the course of my life. This descent into desolation was more than just the end of a marriage. It was a painful journey of self-discovery, a realization of the complexities of love, betrayal, and they say life's a party. But what they don't tell you is sometimes the music stops, the lights come on, and you're left staring at a mess. That was me, standing amidst the wreckage of what I thought was a happy marriage. Our 10th anniversary bash was the epitome of perfection, a lavish affair where laughter flowed as freely as the champagne. My wife, Julia, was the belle of the ball, her smile as bright as the diamonds I'd gifted her. I was on top of the world, a self-made man who just clinched a deal that was the cherry on top of my already thriving business. Life was good, or so I thought. But soon after, things started to change. Julia, once the anchor of my hectic life, became distant. Her presence at home dwindled. Work meetings and girls' nights filled her calendar. I tried to brush it off as a phase. After all, we were both busy adults, right? Then came the day that turned my doubts into cold, hard reality. I stumbled upon her phone, buzzing with a new message. Curiosity, they say, killed the cat. In my case, it shattered my world. The texts I saw were not just friendly, they were intimate, laced with a familiarity that twisted my gut into knots. They were from some guy named Mark, a name I'd never heard before. Confronting Julia was like igniting a powder keg. She denied everything, her words sharp and accusing. I was being paranoid, she claimed, suffocating her with my insecurities. But the trust between us had cracked, and I couldn't just let it go. So, I did what any desperate, cornered husband would do. I hired a private investigator. It felt like a betrayal, a sordid step into a world I never thought I'd enter. Yet, I needed the truth, no matter how ugly it might turn out to be. As days turned into weeks, the pie fed me bits and pieces of Julia's secret life. Each report, each photograph was a hammer blow to the life I'd built. It wasn't just texts anymore. There were dinners, late-night rendezvous, and that look in her eyes that I thought was reserved only for me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, a man who prided himself on making smart, calculated decisions, completely blindsided in the most personal aspect of his life. I thought I knew her. I thought we were happy. But as the evidence piled up, I had to face the harsh truth. The woman I loved, the woman I'd built a life with, was a stranger. The day I got those photos from the pie was the day my world stopped spinning. There they were, glossy, undeniable proof of Julia's affair. Seeing her with another man was like a punch to the gut. I sat there, in my office, the pictures spread out on my desk like some grotesque collage, each one a betrayal. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what came next. I was at work, right in the middle of a meeting when I got served divorce papers, in front of my entire team. The look of pity in their eyes was almost as painful as the contents of those papers. Julia was going for the jugular, not just half of our assets, but full custody of our kids, too. It felt like I was in some twisted nightmare. I moved out of our family home, our sanctuary of over a decade, and into a cramped apartment that echoed with the silence of my new reality. The walls were bare, the rooms filled with the ghosts of my former life. Adjusting was an understatement. I was sleepwalking through a life I didn't recognize. Then came the divorce proceedings. You see, in our society, divorce isn't just between two people. It's a spectacle, and ours was no exception. Accusations flew, dirty laundry was aired, and whatever shred of privacy or dignity I had left was trampled under the public's watchful eye. I'd become that guy, the one people whispered about in the corridors. The worst part? The affair went public. Julia's once pristine social image was now tainted. The same society that once adored her, now shunned her. The irony of it was cold comfort to me. I had wanted justice, sure, but watching her fall from grace wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined. It was just sad, a grim reminder of how far we'd fallen. The days blurred into one another, each bringing its own set of challenges. I was fighting a battle on all fronts, personal, professional, legal. But in this whirlwind of chaos, there was a strange sense of clarity. It was as if the storm had stripped away all the pretenses, leaving me with nothing but the raw truth of my situation. And somewhere in that truth, I began to find the strength to rebuild, piece by painstaking piece. You'd think that after a scandal like mine, the worst thing would be the heartbreak or the loneliness. But no, it was watching the empire I built from scratch crumble before my eyes. Clients I'd worked with for years, clients I called friends, vanished. Each email saying, "We're moving in a different direction," was a nail in the coffin of my once thriving business. The divorce wasn't just taking my marriage, it was taking my life's work. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, Mike, an old college buddy, called me up. "I've got a proposition for you," he said. He'd been following my saga, and instead of turning away, he was reaching out. Mike had this crazy idea for a tech startup, something about revolutionizing the way small businesses handle online marketing. It was risky, completely out of my comfort zone, but what did I have to lose? So, I dove in. I poured every ounce of energy into this new venture. The long nights, the endless research, the constant pitching to skeptical investors. It was exhausting but exhilarating. There's something about building something from nothing that reignites a fire in you. A fire I thought Julia had extinguished. Slowly but surely, we started to gain traction. Our small team was like a family, each of us driven by our own reasons, united by the common goal of proving ourselves. We landed our first major client, then another, and then another. It was more than just a business succeeding. It was my comeback story. Meanwhile, karma was having its way with Julia. Her lover, the man she wrecked our family for, walked out on her, cited the scandal and her manipulative ways as his reasons. Part of me felt vindicated, sure, but another part, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, felt sorry for her. She was reaping what she'd sown. But the sight of someone you once loved hitting rock bottom is never pleasant. The success of the new venture was about more than just financial gain. It was a testament to resilience, a middle finger to every doubter, every whisper behind my back, every pitiful look I'd received in the past months. I wasn't just rebuilding my business, I was rebuilding myself. Sometimes, life gives you a second chance, but not in the way you expect. The day I won that court case over our shared vacation home, it wasn't just about the property. It was a symbol, a sign that maybe, just maybe, the tides were turning in my favor. It was a minor victory, but it felt like a watershed moment in the never-ending storm of my divorce. Around the same time, Julia's life seemed to be unraveling at the seams. Her financial woes were the talk of the town, quite the fall from grace for someone who once prided herself on her social status. Her so-called friends started distancing themselves, as if her misfortune was contagious. I won't lie, part of me felt a grim satisfaction seeing her get a taste of her own medicine. But life had more in store for me. My new business, which started as a desperate shot in the dark, landed a deal that was nothing short of a miracle. We secured a contract with one of the biggest names in the industry, catapulting us back into the limelight. From the ashes of my old life, I was rising, stronger and more determined than ever. Then, out of the blue, Julia reached out. She wanted to talk, to sort things out. Mistakes, misunderstandings, the words tasted bitter. I'd moved past the anger, but the scars were still there, raw and tender. I met her, yes, but the man she faced that day was no longer the one she left. I listened, more out of curiosity than anything else. Her pleas, once capable of swaying me, now fell on deaf ears. My focus was my children, my business, not the remnants of a love turned sour. It was a surreal experience, Watching the woman who once held my heart now grasping at straws, trying to claw her way back into a life she'd willingly thrown away. But the bridges were burned, and I was not about to rebuild them for her to cross again. The fallout from her choices wasn't just legal or financial, it was social suicide. The same people who once flocked around her were now nowhere to be seen. She was left to face the consequences alone, ostracized from the world she once ruled. This chapter of my life wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about learning, growing, and accepting that some things, once broken, can never be put back together. It was a hard lesson, learned through tears and turmoil, but it was mine, and it had shaped me into who I was becoming. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. There's something about hitting rock bottom. It strips away all the pretenses, all the noise, and leaves you with what's truly important. For me, that was my kids. The day they told me they wanted to stay with me, not just for a weekend or a holiday, but for good, that was the day I knew I'd done something right amidst all the chaos. Their choice spoke volumes, more than any court ruling ever could. It was a bittersweet victory, though. They were seeking refuge from the storm their mother had created, and as much as I welcomed them with open arms, it pained me to see them caught in the crossfire of our broken marriage. Business-wise, things were looking up. We launched a product that was the first of its kind in the market, a real game changer. The buzz it created was unreal. We were not just back in business, we were making headlines. It felt like a vindication of all the late nights, the doubts, the risks. This success was more than financial. It was a testament to what you can achieve when you refuse to give up, no matter how many times life knocks you down. Meanwhile, Julia's world seemed to be crumbling faster than ever. The legal fees from our never-ending divorce battle were piling up, and her lavish lifestyle was no longer sustainable. I heard through the grapevine that she had started selling off her jewelry, designer clothes, remnants of a life she could no longer afford. It was a stark contrast to the life she'd chosen over our family. During this time, I met someone. Sarah was her name. Meeting her was like a breath of fresh air. She was everything Julia wasn't: kind, genuine, grounded. She didn't care about my money or my past. She saw me, the real me, not the tabloid version or the successful entrepreneur. We started dating, taking it slow. The kids liked her, which was all I could ask for. She brought a sense of normalcy, a sense of peace that had been missing from my life for far too long. Julia, on the other hand, was forced to downsize. The luxurious house we once called a home was no longer hers. Last I heard, she'd moved into a modest apartment, a far cry from the opulence she was accustomed to. Part of me felt sorry for her. We'd shared a life, after all. But another part, the part that had been betrayed and dragged through the mud, couldn't help but think it was a fitting outcome for the choices she'd made. Life's funny, you know? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws you a curveball. But sometimes, those curveballs can lead to a home run. That's what happened when Sarah entered our lives. The kids took to her like fish to water. There was laughter in the house again. Real laughter. We'd sit around the dinner table, sharing stories, making plans. It felt like a family, a real family. Sarah had this way of making things feel normal, even when the world outside was anything but. But while we were finding our peace, Julia's world was falling apart. Social media can be brutal, and she was getting the brunt of it. The backlash was fierce. I'd see the comments, the judgments passed by strangers. It was a public shaming of the worst kind. I won't lie. Part of me thought she deserved it, but another part, maybe the fatherly part, felt bad. I knew the impact it was having on her mental health. It's one thing to face consequences, but another to be torn apart by the faceless masses. In the midst of all this, my business was thriving. We were making waves, and people were taking notice. I was awarded for my entrepreneurial spirit, for making a comeback against all odds. Standing there, accepting that award, I looked out and realized how far I'd come. From the depths of despair to a moment of triumph, it was a journey I'd never forget. It was more than an award. It was a validation of my resilience, my refusal to be kept down. The fallout from the scandal was reaching far and wide, and it hit Julia hard when her own parents turned their backs on her. They were traditional, the kind who viewed family and reputation above all else. They couldn't stomach what she'd done, the scandal she'd caused. It was a harsh blow, losing her family over choices she'd made. I felt for the kids. They were caught in the middle of this familial rift, through no fault of their own. As for us, we were moving up, quite literally. I bought a new house, a place where we could start fresh. It was spacious, with a big backyard for the kids, a place where they could grow, where we could make new memories. It was a symbol of our new beginning, a testament to the life we were building together. The day we moved in, I stood at the doorway, watching the kids run around, exploring every nook and cranny, Sarah organizing the kitchen, her laughter mingling with theirs. It felt right. It felt like home. Life's like a road, full of twists and turns. My road was veering towards a sunny horizon while Julia seemed to be stuck in a never-ending storm. I heard through the grapevine that she tried to start her own business, a boutique or something. But it tanked hard. No support, no connections. She'd burned too many bridges. I couldn't help but think it was a grim reminder of how alone she'd made herself. Meanwhile, our kids were thriving. Jack nailed every baseball game, and Lily, my little math whiz, was acing her classes. They'd come home with trophies and certificates, their faces beaming with pride. "Thanks, Dad," they'd say, "for always being there." Those words, let me tell you, they meant everything. It was proof that despite the mess, I was doing something right for them. The news about Julia's health hit me unexpectedly. Stress, loneliness, it was all taking its toll. I saw her once during this time, and the change was stark. The vibrant woman I once knew was now just a shadow, frail and hollow-eyed. Our marriage was long over, but it was hard to see her like that. The mother of my children, someone I once shared a life with. In the midst of this, something beautiful happened. I proposed to Sarah. It was nothing fancy, just us and a sunset. But when she said yes, it felt like a new chapter opening. We started planning a small wedding, nothing like the extravagant affair I had with Julia. This time, it was about us, about the simplicity of our love. But Julia, she wasn't done yet. She tried to stir up trouble, spreading rumors, trying to drag my name through the mud again. But it didn't stick. People had seen through her, and my reputation was stronger than ever, built on hard work and resilience. Her attempts fell flat, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality, like that chapter of my life was truly closing. Life's a journey of ups and downs, and I'd seen my fair share of both. But that day, the day Sarah and I got married, was definitely one of the UPS. It was a modest affair, just close friends and family, but it was perfect. The local media caught wind of it and gave us a little shout out. Positive stuff? Eh? Local businessman finds love again, kind of story. It felt good, not gonna lie. The kids were beaming, Sarah was radiant, and me? I was probably the happiest guy on the planet. Meanwhile, Julia was on a different path. I heard from mutual friends that she was doing some soul searching, finally coming to grips with the havoc she'd wreaked. I guess solitude does that to you, makes you reflect on your life, your choices. I can't say I didn't feel a twinge of something, not quite sympathy, but something close. We'd shared a life, after all. But that chapter was closed, and I had turned the page. Sarah and I went on our honeymoon, a cozy little getaway. We celebrated not just our marriage, but everything we'd overcome to be together. There were moments during those quiet evenings, watching the sunset, when I'd think about the roller coaster my life had been. From the depths of despair to finding love and happiness again. It was surreal. Sarah, with her unwavering support and love, had been my rock through it all. Back in town, Julia was reaching out to old friends, trying to mend fences. But it wasn't going well. Too many bridges had been burned, too many words had been said. It's tough, watching someone who was once a vital part of your world become an outcast. But we reap what we sow, and Julia was learning that the hard way. On the business front, things were booming. We were expanding internationally, breaking into markets I'd only dreamed of a few years back. It was a testament to the hard work and dedication of my team, and to the resilience we'd all shown. We were making waves, and it felt incredible to be leading the charge. It was one of those parent events, and Jack and Lily had to talk about their heroes. To my utter surprise, they both spoke about me, my struggles, my comeback, how I'd always been there for them. Their words, simple yet sincere, struck a chord in me. Amidst all the chaos, I'd managed to be a good dad, and that was worth more than any business success. Julia's descent continued. She was neck-deep in debt, struggling to keep a roof over her head. I heard she tried to start a business, write a book, anything to claw her way back. But nothing took off. The book, particularly, was a desperate move. A tell-all about our life, our marriage. But no publisher wanted to touch it. Maybe they saw it for what it was, a last-ditch effort to capitalize on a failed relationship. On my end, things were looking up. I decided to give back, to help others who'd hit rock bottom like I once had. I started a charity foundation focused on rebuilding lives, whether it was through financial aid, counseling, or simply giving a listening ear. It was my way of paying forward the second chance I'd been given. The highlight of this chapter of my life came unexpectedly. A major magazine got wind of my story, the downfall, the comeback, the new family, the charity work. They did a feature on me, calling it an inspiring tale of resilience and redemption. It was surreal, seeing my face on the cover, reading about my journey. I wasn't just a businessman anymore. I was a symbol of hope. As for Julia, she ended up alone. It was a harsh reality that she had to face, the consequences of her choices, the fallout of her actions. It was a sad end to a story that had started with so much promise. But that's the thing about life, it goes on. Ever since we moved to this quaint suburb, Jenna's eyes had sparkled with a different light. She found her haven in an exclusive book club, a sanctuary for avid readers like herself. Initially, it seemed like a blessing. She'd return from the meetings with a vibrant energy, her laughter filling our home like music. But as months rolled by, I noticed subtle changes. She'd whisper on the phone, smile secretively at text messages, and our conversations, they just dwindled. One night, she came home past midnight, her eyes dodging mine. The discussion went late. Love, she murmured, her voice a hushed escape. My heart wanted to believe her, but my mind, it churned with doubts. I decided to follow her the next time she left for the club. The evening air was crisp as I trailed her car from a safe distance. She drove to the heart of the city, parking outside an old Victorian building, its walls echoing stories of a bygone era. The place didn't look like any book club I'd ever seen. Through the dimly lit windows, I could see silhouettes, people moving with an odd familiarity. I slipped in quietly, finding a spot behind a row of antique bookshelves. My heart raced as I peered through the gaps. There she was, my Jenna, her eyes locked with a man I'd never seen. They spoke in hushed tones, their hands touching briefly, a gesture so intimate it clawed at my chest. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of truth I had just witnessed. As I prepared to confront them, a sudden commotion erupted. The group gathered around something, their voices a mix of shock and excitement. I strained to see, but before I could understand, Jenna's eyes met mine across the room. Time stood still, her expression a tangled web of fear and surprise. I retreated hastily, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. What was this place? Who was that man? And most importantly, what was Jenna hiding? Outside, the cold night air felt harsh against my skin, a stark contrast to the fire burning in my chest. I knew then, this was just the beginning. There were secrets lurking in the shadows of that book club, secrets that threatened to shatter the life I thought we had. As I drove back home, a single, haunting question echoed in my mind. What happens next? Like, share, and subscribe if you're hooked and can't wait to uncover the secrets of the double life of a book club. The next few days were a blur. My mind kept replaying that night, each memory a shard piercing through my heart. Jenna's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She was on edge, her eyes darting nervously whenever her phone buzzed. It was as if she was guarding a sinister secret, one that could crumble our world. I had to know more. I couldn't let this gnawing suspicion eat away at me. So, I decided to delve deeper into the mystery of the book club. My first stop was the local library. If this club was as exclusive as Jenna claimed, someone there must have heard about it. The librarian, a kindly old woman with a penchant for mystery novels, raised an eyebrow when I mentioned the club. "Ah, that club," she said, a note of caution in her voice. "It's not what it appears to be. They're a selective bunch, not just anyone can join." Her words were cryptic, but they fueled my resolve. That evening, as Jenna prepared for another meeting, I feigned exhaustion and retreated to our bedroom. As soon as I heard the car pull away, I sprang into action. Dressed in dark clothing, I headed back to the Victorian building, determination my silent companion. I crept in, unnoticed, finding a new hiding spot. The group was already gathered, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of antique lamps. I strained to listen, catching fragments of conversations that made no sense. They weren't discussing books, they were planning something. Something big. My heart pounded as I watched Jenna. She seemed different here, more alive, more dangerous. The man from before was there too, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. A surge of jealousy and anger washed over me, but I forced myself to stay focused. Suddenly, the room went silent. A new figure had entered, someone I couldn't quite see. The group huddled around, listening intently. The air was thick with anticipation. I leaned in closer, desperate to catch their words. That's when disaster struck. A bookshelf I was leaning against gave way with a loud crash, sending books tumbling down. All eyes turned towards me, shock and recognition mirrored in Jenna's eyes. I scrambled to my feet, my cover blown. The group advanced towards me, their expressions a mix of anger and curiosity. Jenna's voice cut through the chaos. "He's my husband." The room fell silent. The mysterious figure stepped forward, his identity sending shockwaves through my very being. It was David, Jenna's ex-fiancé, whom she had often mentioned in passing, always with a hint of unresolved emotions. His presence sent 1,000 questions racing through my mind. Why was he here, and what role did he play in Jenna's secret life? The room was thick with tension, each person waiting for the other to break the silence. David's eyes were fixed on me, a mixture of amusement and challenge in his gaze. "So, you're the husband Jenna can't stop talking about," he said, his voice smooth, yet laced with something sinister. Jenna stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Let's talk outside," she whispered, grabbing my arm. I followed, numb and confused. Outside, under the starless sky, Jenna's facade crumbled. Tears streamed down her face as she began to unravel the truth. The book club was a front, a gathering of individuals bound by a shared past and a dangerous secret. David, their charismatic leader, had lured Jenna back into his world, a world she thought she had escaped when she left him for a simpler, honest life with me. The club? "It's not just about books or affairs," Jenna sobbed. It's much bigger. We're planning to expose a massive corporate scandal, one that David and I uncovered years ago. But we needed a group, a cover, and I got pulled back in. I was stunned. The betrayal I had imagined was of a different kind, a deeper deception that entangled Jenna in a web of danger and moral dilemmas. David's plan was to use the club as a cover to leak the scandal to the press, but the stakes were high. Anyone involved was at risk. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice a mix of anger and hurt. "I wanted to protect you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could keep my two worlds separate, but I was wrong." The weight of her confession hung heavy between us. I was torn between the love for my wife and the shock of her double life. Just then, a black car pulled up. Its windows rolled down, revealing a face that sent a chill down my spine. It was. In the car sat Mr. Hargrove, the CEO of the corporation entangled in the scandal Jenna and David were trying to expose. His cold, calculating eyes bore into us, sending a wave of dread through my body. How did he find us? The implications were terrifying. "Jenna, we need to talk." Hargrove's voice was calm, but there was an underlying threat that couldn't be ignored. Jenna stiffened, her resolve faltering under his gaze. He stepped out of the car, his presence dominating. "You're playing a dangerous game. I suggest you and your little group reconsider your actions," he said, his eyes flickering to me, assessing. Jenna gathered her courage, her voice steady. "We won't be intimidated. The truth needs to come out." Hargrove chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "Be careful, Jenna. You're not the only one with something to lose." With a final piercing look, he got back into his car and drove away. The encounter left us shaken. Jenna clung to me, her body trembling. "What have I gotten us into?" she whispered. We drove home in silence, the night's events weighing heavily on us. Once home, Jenna revealed everything. The club, under David's leadership, had been working to compile irrefutable evidence of Hargrove's corrupt practices. Jenna's role had been to help decode complex financial documents, thanks to her background in finance. "But why involve your ex?" I asked, the jealousy and confusion evident in my voice. Jenna sighed. "David was the one who discovered the scandal initially. We had to work together, despite our past. It was never about rekindling anything with him." I wanted to believe her, but the sting of betrayal, real or perceived, was hard to shake off. The next day, as I grappled with the revelations, I received an anonymous email. It contained a single file, marked urgent. Hesitantly, I opened it and found myself staring at a detailed report of Hargrove's illicit activities, along with a note. "Expose him, or more than your marriage is at stake." The gravity of the situation was now undeniable. We were in too deep, caught in a dangerous game where the stakes were life and death. As I pondered our next move, a sudden knock at the door jolted me. I opened it to find. Standing at the door was a stern-faced man I didn't recognize, his eyes scanning the room behind me with an unsettling intensity. "I need to speak with Jenna," he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for questions. As Jenna approached, her face paled upon seeing him. "Detective Miller," she greeted, her voice a shaky whisper. The detective's presence was ominous, hinting at trouble far beyond our fears. Detective Miller wasted no time. "We've been monitoring Hargrove and his associates, including your book club," he began, his eyes fixed on Jenna. "You're dangerously close to a situation that's much larger than a corporate scandal." Jenna and I exchanged worried glances. The detective's revelation meant our actions were no longer hidden in the shadows. They were under the scrutiny of law enforcement. Miller continued, "We can offer protection, but in exchange, we need everything you have on Hargrove. And we need your cooperation to bring him down." The offer was a lifeline amidst the chaos. Jenna nodded, the burden of her secret life finally lifting. She agreed to work with the detective, promising to deliver the evidence the next day. After Miller left, Jenna and I had a long, heart-to-heart conversation. It was time to lay all cards on the table, to rebuild the trust that had been strained by secrets and lies. We vowed to face the coming storm together. The next morning, as we prepared to hand over the evidence to Detective Miller, an encrypted message popped up on Jenna's phone. It was from David, urgent and foreboding. "Meet me immediately. It's about Hargrove. Don't bring the evidence." Jenna's eyes met mine, a storm of uncertainties swirling in them. We knew meeting David could be a trap, but what if he had critical information? With heavy hearts, we decided to split up. Jenna would meet David while I would deliver the evidence to Detective Miller. It was a risk, but one we felt compelled to take. As I drove towards the police station, my mind raced with possibilities. Meanwhile, Jenna headed to an old warehouse, the designated meeting spot. When I handed the evidence to Miller, his grim expression did little to ease my anxiety. "We'll handle it from here," he said. "Go home and wait for Jenna." But Jenna didn't come home. Hours passed, and her phone went straight to voicemail. A sinking feeling took hold of me. Something was terribly wrong. Rushing to the warehouse, my worst fears materialized. The place was deserted, a single piece of paper lying in the center of the room. I picked it up, my hands trembling. It was a note from David. "You should have trusted me, not the police. Jenna's gone, and it's your fault." Panic coursed through me as I stared at the note. Jenna was missing, and I was clueless about her whereabouts. David's betrayal stung deep, but there was no time to dwell on it. I had to find Jenna. Racing back home, I called Detective Miller, but it went to voicemail. Desperation mounting, I started piecing together every clue, every conversation that might lead me to Jenna. Then it struck me, the book club. Perhaps someone there knew where David might have taken her. I headed back to the Victorian building, the place where this tangled web began. The members were gathered, their faces etched with concern and confusion. Upon seeing me, they fell silent. "I need to find Jenna," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "David has taken her, and I believe he's planning something drastic." The group exchanged glances, the tension palpable. Then, one of them, a woman named Lisa, stepped forward. "I think I know where they might be," she said hesitantly. "David mentioned a safe house once, a place he used when things got complicated." Grasping onto this sliver of hope, I followed Lisa to a secluded cabin hidden deep in the woods. The place looked abandoned, but a faint light flickered through the windows. We approached cautiously, the silence of the woods eerie and foreboding. As we reached the door, muffled voices seeped through. I recognized Jenna's voice, her tone frantic. Bursting through the door, I was met with a scene that chilled me to the bone. Jenna was bound to a chair, her eyes wide with fear. David stood over her, a crazed look in his eyes. In his hand was a flash drive, likely containing copies of the evidence against Hargrove. "Stop this, David," I yelled, my heart pounding. David turned, a twisted smile on his face. "You don't understand, do you? This was never just about exposing Hargrove. It's bigger than that, and Jenna, she's the key." Before he could continue, the sound of sirens pierced the air. The police, led by Detective Miller, swarmed the cabin. In the chaos, David made a break for it, clutching the flash drive. I lunged at him, and in the scuffle, the flash drive flew from his grasp and slid under a nearby cabinet. The police apprehended David, and I rushed to Jenna, untying her. Her relief at being safe was palpable, but our victory was short-lived. As the police searched the cabin, a disturbing discovery was made. Hidden in a concealed compartment were documents and evidence linking not only Hargrove but also high-ranking officials in a web of corruption far more extensive than we had imagined. Detective Miller approached us, his expression grave. "You two have unearthed a conspiracy that goes to the very top. You're not safe. We need to get you into protective custody immediately." As we were escorted out, I glanced back at the cabin. The flash drive still lay hidden, its secrets untapped. But for now, Jenna and I had a more pressing concern: staying alive. As Detective Miller ushered us into the back of an unmarked police car, the reality of our situation sank in. We were now key witnesses in a case that reached the highest echelons of power. Fear and uncertainty clouded my thoughts, but Jenna's hand in mine was a comforting anchor. We were taken to a secure location, a nondescript house in a quiet neighborhood. Miller briefed us on the situation. "You two have kicked a hornet's nest. We need to keep you under the radar until the trial. It's not just about Hargrove anymore. There are others, powerful people who will do anything to keep this quiet." The days turned into weeks as we lived in our protective bubble. We had each other, but the isolation was stifling. We were cut off from the world, with only occasional visits from Detective Miller bringing updates and supplies. One evening, as we sat discussing our future, Miller arrived with news. "We've been through the evidence you provided. It's solid, but without the flash drive, our case isn't airtight. We need that final piece to bring the whole house of cards down." The flash drive. It was still hidden in the cabin. A plan began to form in my mind. I knew it was risky, but it was a risk we had to take. With Miller's reluctant agreement, we devised a covert operation to retrieve the drive. Under the cover of darkness, we returned to the cabin. The place was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of our last visit. I slipped inside, my heart racing. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence. I found the cabinet and retrieved the flash drive, a small object holding so much power. Just as I was about to leave, a sudden noise startled me. Footsteps outside. I peeked through the window and saw shadowy figures approaching. We weren't alone. Quickly, I signaled to Jenna and Miller, and we hid in the shadows. The figures entered the cabin, their flashlights sweeping the room. They were searching for something, the flash drive. Realizing the danger, we carefully made our way out, avoiding detection. Once we were a safe distance away, Miller radioed for backup. The drive was the key to exposing the conspiracy, but we knew those implicated wouldn't stop coming after us. As we made our way back to the safe house, a new sense of determination settled over us. We were no longer just survivors. We were fighters, ready to bring the truth to light. Back at the safe house, with the flash drive securely in our possession, a sense of urgency enveloped us. Detective Miller wasted no time. He arranged for a team of experts to analyze the drive, uncovering a trove of incriminating evidence that implicated not just Hargrove but a network of corruption linking politics, finance, and the corporate world. As the trial date approached, the tension was palpable. Jenna and I were key witnesses, the linchpin in a case that could topple giants. We prepared for the courtroom, going over our testimonies, aware that every word carried immense weight. The day of the trial arrived, a day that felt more like a lives. The courthouse was a fortress, swarming with media and security. As we made our way inside, flashes of cameras and shouted questions assaulted us, but we remained focused, our resolve unwavering. The trial was a whirlwind. Prosecutors presented the evidence with precision, painting a damning picture of Hargrove and his associates. When it was our turn to testify, Jenna and I took the stand, recounting our ordeal and the evidence we had uncovered. Our words echoed in the packed courtroom, every syllable a strike against the corrupt network we had exposed. As the trial progressed, the defense tried to discredit us, painting us as unreliable, involved for personal gain. But the evidence was irrefutable. The flash drive, in particular, was a silent testament to the truth, its contents a beacon of justice. After days of intense proceedings, the jury retired to deliberate. The wait was agonizing, each passing hour a test of our patience and courage. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The jury returned, their verdict clear in their somber expressions. Guilty. The word rang through the courtroom, a sweet sound of victory and relief. Hargrove and his county conspirators were found guilty on all counts. Justice had prevailed, but the journey was far from over. As we stepped out of the courthouse, free but forever changed, we knew our lives would never be the same. We had fought against giants and emerged victorious, but at a cost. Our normal life was a distant memory, replaced by a new reality shaped by our ordeal. Detective Miller approached us, a smile of genuine respect on his face. "You did good. Thanks to you, we've struck a significant blow against corruption. But be careful. People like Hargrove have long memories." As we walked away, hand in hand, a mix of emotions flooded us: triumph, relief, but also a sense of wariness. We had exposed a deep-seated corruption, but in doing so, we had also made powerful enemies. Our story had reached its conclusion, but our lives were just beginning a new chapter, one where we had to be vigilant, always aware of the shadows cast by